Welcome, Kashif.
Pleasure.
How are you doing today?
I'm awesome.
We're in Miami.
Yeah.
I know you live here in Florida.
No, I'm from Toronto, Canada.
I know you're from Toronto, but I thought you live here in Miami, or your company based.
No, our company actually moved to LA, so Los Angeles, right?
Okay.
And I come here maybe a couple times a year. So I live here too.
I think like 3 years ago when I met you in Beverly Hills at Dave Asprey show, your company was here out of Miami.
So, okay. So at that time, now you're back to something new. We're going back. So at that time, we were partnering on a lab in Miami and ended up moving to Kentucky.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now your lab is in Kentucky.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your personal journey and what initially drew you to genetics. And was there a specific moment when you realized you could unlock more than just health insights and truly transform everybody's approach to life?
Yeah, so for me, unintentional, I don't come from the industry, right? I was in the tech world, so I used to help technology startups grow. And I was like the sort of guy with experience that knew everything that they didn't know that they even needed, right? To help something do a better job. I got really sick, and I think a lot of great functional health tools and services and people with knowledge come from trying to heal themselves. And that's what happened to me. I needed to fix myself, and that eventually turned into my eczema, my psoriasis, my migraines, my gut issues, my depression. No doctor telling me what was really going on. And when I asked, like, why did I get sick? What did I do wrong? I first then at that point learned that they don't even do that, right? I didn't know that that's not what they did. And so I eventually then discovered through my unique genome that there was genes missing. Right? And there were certain biological processes that were meant to protect me from the environment, from foods, from stress that I just didn't do. And so the total cumulative load of those caused so much inflammation that I started to feel horrible, right? And so when I started to learn how I was wired and that I had the right habits, things just trickle away. And I'm sitting in front of you without these 5 diseases, right?
Amazing.
So yeah, heal myself,
how long did
heal
it
others.
take you that?
So some of the stuff, there's things like, skin issues, hair issues, etc. You can resolve those in weeks.
Just changing your habits, how you eat, right?
Because it's like, think of your skin as like a check engine, like telling you problem, dig deeper. It's not the disease, right? It's the warning sign. So the inflammation that gets reduced, that gets resolved fairly quickly. But things like hormones, things like thyroid, for example, those can take many months, but they're doable, right? Yeah. So once you got to remove what's causing the problem, then the problem slowly trickles away.
And you talk about this in your book, The DNA Way.
Yeah.
How do you overcome your things, how your health and things like that. So let's talk about your company.
Yeah.
What is it different than anything else, and what exactly you guys unfold? And because personally, I've done it, and I did it on my daughter. And when I listened to you 3 years ago, Dave Asprey's show, I was like, oh my God. You talked about also not just your experience, how you change your health, but also your family. Like your nephew, he was at 7 years old, had all these issues like panic attacks and many other issues, and you guys checked him out and just changed a little bit of how he ate and to take away gluten. And it changed. I was like, oh my God. I remember my daughter was going through some, like tantrums and being just crazy, and I'm like, goodness. And then I did the test. I was like, oh, there's one thing and it literally like
changed everything.
So let's talk about this. How is it important to do genetic tests for to figure out what's happening in your body? And what is genetic tests anyway?
So all the health and wellness stuff makes sense. What we're saying is, how do you know where to start? What do you prioritize? What's the actual problem you need to solve, right? As opposed to listening to every podcast, watching interview, and doing it all, and literally hurting yourself potentially, which some people do. So what is DNA? Every one of your 50 trillion cells has an instruction manual inside. And the cell reads the manual to know how to do its job. So a kidney cell, a heart cell, a detox cell, a hormone, the instructions drive the work. So if you can read the instruction manual, you know exactly what your cells are being told. And you can read what is misinstructed, what is over-instructed, right? There's certain things you're doing too much of, making too much estrogen, things like that, for example. And then you know where to intervene. And so as opposed to, here's what the problem looks like. Your daughter had an anxiety issue, right? That's what it looks like on the surface. It's more like what biology is broken, plus environment, nutrition, lifestyle, that combination equals the way she's behaving. versus what biology is broken, meaning there's something you need to remove from her environment that she was not wired for, which somebody else had no problem with, or there's something you needed to add to her biology to make it as if she had the good biology. Those are the two options. And so all we're saying is that your genetics can prescribe what these two things are. What do you remove? What do you add?
Yeah.
And then you become in the middle as you should have been.
Like in my example, before I did your test, I was kind of like thinking that, I had a little bit ADHD, but I didn't know. It was like, how do you go and about and test yourself? Yeah. And I wasn't like putting it together. I was like, I'm just like, I cannot focus. I'm like running around doing multiple things and I could not finish.
Yeah.
And so when your test came back, it said it, a slight ADHD. Thank God my daughter doesn't have that. I'm like, good. But mine was showed, and it's like, and then implementation. What do you need to do? You take 5-HTP.
Yeah.
I started literally helped so much. When I stopped taking 5-HTP, it comes back like in 1 month, and I'm like again like literally.
Yes.
And so some certain foods I love how you recommend, antioxidant, whatever. What else is in your?
So that's a perfect example, because we use the language ADHD because that's what you resonate with, that's what you understand, right? Meaning in general, everybody. But the actual mechanism, I don't believe you have ADHD. What you have is there's a neurochemical in your brain called serotonin. It's known clinically as an anxiety and depression chemical, but it's not understood why. So we get deeper into the why. So it regulates your mood. Whatever's happening, good news, happy, sad, are you responding as the news, or are you more like up and down, right? Which starts to look like ADHD. And so the mechanism is serotonin allows your brain to prioritize all of the stimulus. So we're sitting here chatting, what's he doing? What's that like? What's all this stuff? Can you focus or not? And what looks like ADHD, you can't focus, it's actually hyperattention. I pay attention to everything. I see everything, I smell everything, I notice everything, right? Which is, it's a superpower, it's a strength. But put you in the middle of a classroom, the teacher doesn't understand what that is, right? So what we say is that there's no need to fix this. This is your strength, your ability to see it all, which is what makes you so good at what you do. Right. But sitting down at dinner with the family, going on a vacation, it's gonna look like you have ADHD because you're overwhelmed in terms of your nervous system. That's where temporarily take some 5-HTP and you feel calm and zen to add the serotonin that your body doesn't naturally do. So this is where we see the same thing that sounds like it could be a problem is actually also your strength.
Interesting. Like in my case, I'm cool to hang out. I'm very like tete-a-tete. But like for me, like when I'm at home and trying to focus, I'm like multitasking, I cannot sit. So anyways, when you started the DNA company, what were the biggest obstacles you faced in getting people to understand the power of personalized healthcare?
Yeah, I would say first of all, what was already understood about genetics, which I think is wrong. So the first little while, like, hey, we work with genetics. Like, I don't know if I'm getting Alzheimer's. And that was kind of it. I don't know if I'm getting breast cancer.
A lot of people still do that.
Still, yeah. Thinking that that's all that you can learn. Versus it's not a prescription for Alzheimer's, it's a priority. And now you have to do the work to prevent it. So if you know it's coming, and I can tell you exactly why it's coming, and now you know exactly what to do, and with some level of certainty, it's not coming anymore, that's the power we now have. It used to be, here's an Alzheimer's gene, and you have a risk, and talk to your doctor.
And nobody tells you what to do. You're like, okay, now you're on your own.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. You do have 2 different tests, right, in your company now, and also you teach people the program that to go and how do you change it, how you implement it. So talk about that, which is really important.
Yeah, there's a couple layers to this. There's the company, the DNA company, last year merged with the telemedicine company. So I built it, I created the science, I made it easy so it was the way I needed it to be. I'm not a scientist, but now I can speak to it, I can read it, I can understand it. Just like you read the report, you knew what to do, right?
Super easy.
So I built it in the way that I wished it looked like the first time I needed it, right? So now, having said that, next step is how do I get this to everybody? Because everybody needs this help. So we merged with the healthcare company, and at that time, I stepped away and I stopped running the company. It was a year ago, so I no longer run the company. I help whenever they need help, but I'm still founder, owner, all that stuff, but they do their thing, right? Why? Because I don't claim to be an FDA and Medicare and Medicaid expert. They are, right? And we need this to get to everybody. So having said that, now that it's sort of accessible to more people, I've taken a step back and said, I still know this stuff very, very well. I can coach people. So I host master classes, I host events, and people will show up. I'll have like 50 people online on a Zoom call. They have their DNA in their hand, and we'll spend 8-9 hours together.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and they love it. I just did one literally while I was flying here to the event. I finished one and then flew directly here right after, and I was exhausted, but yeah, that's what we do. And so whether it's a coach, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a naturopath, whatever, we have a whole team. And then I also do it myself.
Yeah, it's beautiful because I think it's so important to have people not just do the test and hang them and not knowing what to do. Because the basic medical environment looks like that. You've got the cancer, and now you're on your way. You go figure it out. We can give you this pill. You can do this. So I love how now your company and some other companies are taking approach on personalized, like, hey, let me take your hand, let me guide you, let me show you, let's take a look and dive into and see how we can implement all these things. And some of them will work, some of them not work. This is so amazing.
It's the exact opposite of the allopathic medical doctor experience.
Right.
Which is the absolute minimum connection.
Minimum. It's like a conveyor, So what's surprising insight from your own DNA test that forced you to rethink how you live your life and habits that completely shift your life?
So when I was sick and I had all these issues, I believed the doctors because I used to live in the same neighborhood as my business partner, drive to work with a business partner, eat lunch with him, work with him, go home with him. And then we would go to our separate homes, right? So everything I did, like most of the day I spent with him, and he was in great health. So I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. Otherwise, why wasn't he also sick, right? That's what I learned when I dove into my DNA. There's a gene called GSTM1. And some people are probably familiar with the antioxidant glutathione.
Yeah.
Glutathione is master antioxidant, bind and remove chemicals. You pee them out, sweat them out, poop them out, whatever, right? So that gene drives glutathione activity in your gut. So whenever you eat, the chemicals, pesticides that come along with that food, this gene is responsible to remove. I don't have the gene. Missing. It's not even what version, what variant. Literally, I don't even have the gene. So when I and my business partner were going to lunch every day, I had a friend who's a functional medicine doctor who said, I wasn't so much into trying to be healthy, but he said, focus on like a Mediterranean diet and you'll be good. So we used to go regularly to this Lebanese restaurant down the street from our office, and hummus, chicken, salads. And I didn't know that in Canada where I live, that there's chemicals used to dry the chickpeas when they farm them so that they can, because we have long winters, so they can store them and they can turn them around faster. And then there's other chemicals to expand them so they can sell them, right? And so Health Canada says those chemicals are safe because when they test them on a few thousand people, most of them don't have what I have. They're not safe for me. Right, so that potent toxin was wrecking my gut, damaging the lining, causing leaky gut, and I ended up with all these diseases. That's not the only thing, but that's one of many things. But that was the aha moment, like, wow, I can now dig into my biology.
This is incredible. If someone only wanted to try one test from DNA, which one would they have to?
I think DNA 360 is the foundation. Where before you do anything, right? Before you do anything in your health and wellness journey, it's like, what do I actually need to do? What's actually broken and how do I fix it? So all the biohacks, something as simple as cold plunging. Okay, everyone's cold plunging. Is that good for your body or not? Because if you have bad genetics around thermoregulation, it's actually going to cause you to store fat.
And actually you can say that because I think the last one that I did didn't say that.
So we keep learning,
It's a new one, right?
We keep learning.
So I need to retest.
You know, that's the beauty of DNA. Your DNA doesn't change.
No, I know, but you did. Like I didn't, in that test, the one I did 3 years ago, it didn't say that.
So the new reports will say new things, right? So you go log in, you're going to see stuff you didn't see 3 years ago.
Oh, seriously? So if I log in, I can like see more things?
They'll see, yeah. So the genes don't, and that's the foundational sort of, because your DNA doesn't change, unlike any other blood work, lab work, gut microbiome testing, it's one time.
One time, which is...
Yes, and we keep learning, and we keep teaching you for the rest of your life.
Amazing.
Because the data comes from the same place.
So what's your favorite biohacking tools that you implement now these days?
I think that today, where people really need to start is on their nervous system, right? And most people don't realize it, that they have fight or flight trauma type states that they're in. Given the reality of the world we're in and given what we just went through for so many years, especially women are stuck in a fight or flight or a trauma. And it's like, hey, I'm doing everything. I'm doing the food, I'm doing the exercise, none of it works. It's not working because your body's not trying to recover. It's in fight or flight. It thinks you're going to battle. It's driving all the blood to your feet and your fists, not to your organs, to detoxify them and give them nutrients. And so dealing with the nervous system first. So I've been using some frequency devices on my vagus nerve, right? Vagal tone type stuff. And I feel it. Like when there's certain people that I know there's conflict because of business, and I can now deal with that person, and 8 out of 10 feels like a 2 out of 10. Right? So that's where I think people should start.
Like, for also self-care, I think.
Yeah.
Remember to take breaks, go on vacation.
Yeah.
Do other stuff. But what other supplements that really, tell me one supplement that you think everyone should be taking?
So the thing that everyone is lacking based on our food supply is good mixture of minerals, right? We believe that you are what you eat. You are what you ate, right? Because that thing comes from that. So if you're eating a fruit that came from a tree that's in dead soil because it's been so sprayed with chemicals, there's no minerals. And cut open an apple and leave it on the table, it doesn't oxidize.
No, it does.
Right? Yeah. I remember my daughter, she left her lunch bag at school on a Friday, and I go to pick it up expecting to open this stinky mess, and there's these fresh apples in there. Wow. Right? Like 72 hours later.
Is it organic, you say?
Yeah, organic means no chemicals, but it doesn't mean nutrition. Wow. It doesn't mean the soil is healthy.
So then we need not just ourselves, but also we need our minerals to our kids.
Yes, for sure. Our kids, if you take all the minerals out of your body, all that's left is a puddle of water. It's every structural component of your body. And people underestimate, for example, your bone is not just calcium. There's 61 minerals you need to make bone, right? So why is there so much osteopenia and osteoporosis so early now? So yeah, that's the one thing I would say. Yes, minerals, we're all deficient.
Wow. Yeah. And what age a young child can do such test? Do you recommend?
At birth?
Yeah, I know. At birth. I know. I have a client that when I told them about your company, and they have 3-year-old and 4-year-old, and particularly 2.5-year-old was doing all these crazy tantrums, and it was very not emotionally stable. And when they did the test, they kind of saw that oh wow, it was a great moment opening, what can they do, what to feed, and what kind of the genetics they have.
Yeah, even my young son, when he was I'd say maybe 6 years old, the teacher started saying he had ADHD. I was like, no, he doesn't. You don't even know what ADHD is, right? And so I looked at it, and I wasn't looking for ADHD in the genetics. I was just looking for what biology is broken and what are his habits and how could that equal what the teachers are describing. And so I looked at his DNA, and the first big red flag that I saw was there's an enzyme called amylase, which allows you to break down starch into glucose, energy. So how effectively can you use carbohydrates as fuel? The way we do that is different for different people. Then there's a gene called TCF7L2, which drives your insulin response. And he had the worst version of that. So his ability to use starch as fuel, horrible. His ability to regulate his insulin response, horrible. And the teacher that was complaining he had ADHD was after lunchtime. Where in our South Asian home, he was given rice with meat every day, right? And so his food was putting him into a coma.
Wow.
Right? And it was literally that 1 or 2 hours after lunch they were complaining, but the morning and the late day they weren't complaining so much. So it was more a question of, do we remove this food? Or do we give him some additional fiber or berberine or something to help him metabolically? And it's a little bit of both, right? And now all of a sudden, they're not complaining about ADHD anymore.
That is so cool. I love how, we have so many incredible tools in the past 10 years that we literally can look at our genetics, our body, and literally design and to stay healthy and abundant for a long time.
Yeah.
So what's next for you personally?
So next for me is I want to take this skill, which is I've taken science out of a lab that nobody could understand and turn it into something that's so easy to use, and now many thousands of lives have been changed. So I'm looking for what's the next thing I'm going to apply that to. And I think where that's probably going to land is in frequency and energy medicine, right? Because the same exact thing, I'm working with a scientist right now who has sequenced 138,000 frequencies in the body. How do you consume all that? How do you make sense of all that? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try and make it easy for people, because I believe that that's the medicine we need.
It is. It's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like we started early with Milo.
Yes.
Frequency device to open up our field. Yes. Well, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. And I love chatting with you after all these years.
Yeah.
And continue changing the world.
I'll try.
Change the humanity.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Good
much.
All right.
Unlock your full potential at the Biohackers World Conference and Expo in Los Angeles on March 29th and 30th. Connect with leaders in health optimization, learn the secrets to longevity, boost your performance, and dive into the latest biohacking and wellness innovations. Don't miss out. Tickets are going fast.